Attention, everybody. The views and opinions expressed on the show are not necessarily those of Acts Ministry, Acts Media Group, and or their affiliated supported ministries and or nonprofits. And as always, some of these subjects may be adult in nature, so we recommend discretion when watching with your children. It's that time. It's the Happy Hour with your hosts, Dr. Paul and Nancy Collins. Here they're going to talk about politics and religion, which these days seems to be kind of a circus. So, without any further ado, here they are. Take it away.
All right, I'll take it when that music goes down. Good morning. It's Friday again.
Good morning, Mulvane.
Come. Nancy just made a funny because when I was on radio in Wichita, Kansas, I used to come on in the mornings and I would say, "Hello, Augusta, and good morning, Mulvane." And I found out the signal shot right over Mulvane, Kansas. They couldn't hear me, but that was all right. But I got that idea from the movie with Robin Williams with "Good Morning Vietnam." Remember that?
Oh, that's right.
Remember that
Oh,
movie?
doggies.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the Happy Hour. It is Friday morning, and interestingly enough, comes around this same time every week, Friday. And we have a very special, and I have a cough drop in my mouth because you notice I'm struggling with the throat issues.
But it's not COVID.
But it's not COVID. Anyway, a very special viewer that we want to greet. His name is Eddie Bolton, B-O-L-T-O-N. Remember that name. He's famous in many circles, going to be famous in many more circles. He is quite a singer, good singer, has sung with some of the best in Southern gospel, including the Spear Family, well-known group. They were as well-known in their own way as the Blackwoods and Statesmen and others. Anyway, Eddie, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you. Eddie is a staff member with a major operator of Christian youth camps, does an excellent job. He plays guitar, plays trumpet, and sings beautifully, and taught himself to play mandolin, or ukulele, so that he wrote songs for the youth camp. He writes children's books, very gifted, talented guy. And Eddie and I, we are very fond of each other. In fact, he says that I'm his brother from another mother. Anyway, welcome aboard, Eddie. We're glad to have you. I also I need to greet my first secretary, Shirley, up in St. Joe. Shirley, bless your heart. Hang in there. You are a beautiful lady, great woman, precious woman of God. God loves you. And Nancy and I love you very much. We hope to get to St. Joe and see you one of these days. St. Joe, Missouri. Nancy, I haven't reminded the folks of this in a while, but St. Joseph, Missouri is sometimes called Joetown, or sometimes it's called St. Joe, but it was where the Pony Express originated to carry the mail west. It's also the place where Jesse James was shot in the back while he was adjusting a picture on the wall. Shot in the back by Bob Ford, former gang member of his. And at the time, Jesse was living under an assumed name of Mr. Howard. And so there was a song written that some folks still know. And it has a line in it about Bob Ford, the dirty little coward who shot Mr. Howard and laid poor Jesse in his grave. So, St. Joe is a beautiful old city on the Missouri River. Some beautiful old, very large houses, I'd say mansions, a lot of history, a lot of character. The Pony Express Museum is there. A lot of things to see and do in St. Joseph. And but one of the best things in St. Joseph, and I can't say the best, Shirley, because Virginia may be listening in, and Reed may be listening in, and Loretta may be listening in. Some of my other friends in St. Joe. But Shirley, just between you and Nancy and me and the Gatepost, you're the best thing that ever happened to St. Joe, Missouri. Anyway, we sure love you, Shirley. Want to say hello also to Jerry Chambers. He was a teenager when I was a pastor of his church in St. Joe. And now he's a retired school administrator over there in the St. Louis suburb of Chesterfield, Missouri. Jerry Chambers, great, great, great man. I was privileged to help him with his God and Country Award when I was his pastor in St. Joe, his God and Country Award, of course, with the Boy Scouts. Nancy, the church where I was the pastor, we had what was called Webelos. That was just before Cub Scouts, and then had Cub Scouts, and we had the Boy Scouts, we had the Explorer Post, and we had all the Girl Scout units that were sponsored by the church, and they had their own bus, the Scout bus, to travel in, and they surprised me one night because they dragged me to a meeting in the other end of town, and I sat on a hillside looking down on a big stack of old fence posts, and I heard a drum beating in the distance. I looked up, and there's this, looked like a Native American beating his drum, and there was another one standing there with bow and arrow, and the arrow was on fire, and he loosed the arrow. It came arcing over and down and into that pile of that big stack of fence posts. They were stacked up like a teepee. Set them on fire, and then from on the other side, I heard drums and chanting, and here came a whole tribe of, looked like Indian men and boys marching over, and they went around the fire, and then they started going out into the audience with these tomahawks. And one of them walked up to me and had me stand up, and he hit me with the flat side of the tomahawk right here where my gizzard is. That's what I call my pacemaker, my gizzard. So I'd been tapped to join the tribe of Mikkosay. Now, Mikkosay was originated by someone known as, his name was Roe Bartle, when he was the scout executive at St. Joe. At that time, he had moved on to Kansas City and had become the scout executive in Kansas City, and he started a similar organization called the Order of the Arrow. And because he served as the chief of Mikkosay and the chief in the Order of the Arrow, his nickname was Chief. And he ran for mayor of Kansas City. Mayor Roe Bartle was always known as Chief. And so now you know why there is Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, and there's a football team known as the Kansas City Chiefs. How about that?
Yeah.
Anyway, I put this microphone on the headset the wrong way, and there's wires in my way. Anyway, that's part of my St. Joseph story. There's many, many, many more. I had 5 wonderful years of living there. And by the way, the tribe of Mikkosay gave me my Indian name. It is Warrior Truth Speaker. And when they gave me that name, it was at a campfire, a big bonfire, and they came around behind me and put they were plastic eagle claws. They looked like real eagle claws with feathers and things on a leather thong around my neck, and gave me my name, Warrior Truth Speaker. So you don't have to call me that. You can just call me Paul. Well, let's see. We have a lot of folks to greet, even in Texas. Our 2 ladies down there. A lot of folks in northwest Texas, around Lubbock. All those folks. People in northeast Missouri. People in France, and people in Pakistan and Turkey and South America and Mexico.
All over creation.
Germany, all over creation.
That's right.
Nancy, today, in addition to having greeted our friends, I think Matt let them know that we would be talking about 2 things in particular, politics and religion. Before we really get into that, I want to say a word on behalf of technology. Technology's taken a beating these days. Excuse me. Fix that once and for all. Technology is taking a beating these days because of some of the high-tech companies canceling some folks and not letting their messages go through, and everybody knows what I'm talking about here. Let me tell you, high-tech is the reason we are here, able to speak to the whole world right now with the happy hour. So I don't complain a whole lot about high-tech. At home, in my writing room, I have 2 computers, desktop computers, on my desk. Nancy has one on hers. And I think I can say without undue exaggeration that I process around 200 emails daily. And I use those computers. One I'm processing email, the other one I use for research. And it's a very handy tool to have. But I also keep up with Facebook, and I get a lot of Facebook messages every day. I don't know how many, perhaps way up in the high dozens, way up in the high dozens. And I appreciate Facebook and Twitter. I get that. LinkedIn. I appreciate being able to Google things. I appreciate all that. But like all things, certainly there are times when events will happen that are not pleasing to us. I can remember when I was a kid going to the Friday night, we called it picture show, the movie.
Yeah.
Even as a kid, there were things that came on during the newsreel or whatever that didn't appeal to me. But whoa, where'd that come from? Matt, go get Matt. Nancy, we have some undue noise here. I'm sending Nancy out of the studio to get Matt. We've got terrible noise. We had a bad thing happen.
Did it fix it?
Yeah, that fixed it. Okay.
I keep forgetting to mute that. I'm sorry.
That's all right. We had a technical malfunction there, but Matthew Pearson, station manager, engineer, came in and fixed it. And now we had some undue noise out in the reception area outside the studio. Never a dull moment on the happy hour. Anyway.
That's probably what Jesus says about the world.
That's right. Never a dull moment. Anyway, kudos to high tech. Fellows, we may not always agree with you. You do a lot of things that I don't like, but you do a lot of stuff I like. And I say kudos to you because I make use of you and your services all the time. And it's because of your technology that we are able to be here. But remember this, you would not have had engineers or anybody else with the inventiveness, the creativeness, the scientific know-how, the mathematical know-how, whatever, to do what you do or to have developed what you're using without God.
I know that's right.
Now, this is not a preaching show, but if we're going to give credit, let's give credit every place, not just to high tech, but let's give credit to the God of creation who created everything. Amen. And made all this stuff here. And let's all remember, everybody remember, the earth is the Lord's and the Amen. Fullness thereof. Everything it contains, everything that Silicon Valley can produce, God made it available. Now, having said that, he not only is the earth the Lord's and the fullness thereof, but the universe of universes. Mm-hmm. Everything beyond what we can see or think or imagine.
He spoke and it became.
He spoke and it became. Now, even the oldest Western philosophers rooted in Greece, said something cannot come from nothing. So there had to be a first cause. Now this is where we got from politics into religion. We kind of eased into it. The ontological argument for God is the fact of being. If we be, then God is. Mm-hmm. Since we have being, we're not the only being. Sitting in this room right now, I'm a being, you're a being, Matthew Pearson is a being. So since we are beings, God is a being. Ontological argument for the existence of God. Then there's the teleological. You take one of the old-fashioned watches that was made up of hundreds of little tiny parts. Take it apart. You had to have a designer or watchmaker to put it back together. So design and balance in the universe is proof, according to the teleological argument for God, that God exists. The fact that there is design. There has to be a designer. Then there's the cosmological argument for the existence of God. He is first cause. Everything has to have a first cause. Something cannot come from nothing, a first cause. Then there's the epistemological argument for the existence of God. The very fact that we can gain knowledge and retain knowledge says there has to be a knowledge giver, a source of knowledge. When I was teaching college classes in philosophy, ethics, religions of the world, Western civilization, psychology, so forth, I made it a point for my students to know that the textbook was the source for their knowledge, but behind the textbook there was a writer. Behind the writer there was that. You could trace it all the way back. Knowledge has a source. I even taught New Testament, the first one to do it, in a secular community college. How about that? Anyway, those were some of the best known philosophical arguments for the existence of God, which brings me then to an old verse of Scripture that's found in the King James translation of 1611. And it says, "The fool hath said in his heart, there is no God." Think about that. The fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. Now,
Wow.
there is a place where politics and religion come together, whether people want them to or not. I hope you all are paying attention, because this is good stuff I'm giving you here. There's a place where politics and religion come together, and guess what? It's not just in discussions of issues like the issue of abortion or same-sex marriage and that sort of thing, race relations. It goes back a long ways. Goes back to maybe 1250 BC, that is 1250 years before Christ. There's a word that, a principle that there is God, like I was just talking about. And you shouldn't put any other God before that God.
Okay.
So that's why we have on some of our United States money, "In God We Trust." That's why President Dwight David Eisenhower had added to the Pledge of Allegiance, "One nation under God." And every culture in the world has some idea about God. And there is this principle or law that says there is God. Now, and don't make anything else God. All you tech giants and whizzes, you double deep dish dandies that know how to do algorithms and all of that, don't put anything ahead of God, because there is a God. There's another principle that our bodies can only take so much. So we need to rest one day a week. Now, we have some folks who are so driven career-wise that they just work.
So does their job become their God?
Well, in a way, yes, but they're breaking a law that has to do with the care of the body and the mind. You must take time for the body to rest and the mind to rest. Some people take their problems to bed with them. They take their ambitions to bed with them, and their mind's working overtime all the time. There comes that point at which we need to rest. Now that's a law. It's a physical law. And then there's a concept that has proven to be immutable. That is, that children should pay attention to their parents and honor them. Honor your parents by loving them and by graciously receiving their guidance, even though they're a different generation and they see things through different set of eyes. Remember, you can have all the education in the world, but you cannot educate people to have experience. Experience is something that happens. You can read about walking the hills of Scotland, and I love that, and I like to see TV presentations about it, because that's where my forebears came from. But I've never walked the hills of Scotland. I've never seen the castles. I've never seen a bagpipe player in person. There's a difference between reading about something or seeing something on television and experiencing it. Our parents experience things. I didn't experience what my parents experienced, so I had to pay attention when they told me about their experiences. Some people think that I must be as old as Methuselah because of all the things I remember. A lot of what I remember is what I was told by older brothers, an older sister, and my parents, and my grandmother. So you cannot hurry up experience. So it's an immutable, indelible law that must not be broken. Children should honor their parents. Now, there's a law that says don't murder. That's a good law, because I don't know of anybody who wants to be murdered. Now, I know some people that seem to have a death wish, but they don't want to be murdered. If somebody wants to be murdered, then something's wrong up here in the soulish realm, the mind, the will, and the emotion. Something's wrong.
So is that called suicide?
Well, if they have a death wish, no. Suicide is when they follow through on it. And it's been pretty well proven by psychiatry, especially psychology, which is what medical doctors major in. If they want to become a psychiatrist, they major in psychology. Psychology seems to say that anyone who takes their own life at that moment is not thinking normal. I don't get more into that, but murder. I'm so glad there is a law against murder. There's then something that has to do with the sexuality of life. We have so much going on these days about sexual immorality. There's a law that says adultery is not to be done. And Jesus, who was the greatest teacher that ever lived, he said adultery was more than physical. Adultery was also what goes on in your mind. Mm-hmm. So we know right now that the world seems to be spiraling out of control in the part of the world that we experience in the United States. And I'm sure in other countries likewise, obviously, spiraling out of control when it comes to sexual morality. And that has created, sexual immorality has created disease, has created broken homes, has created financial problems, has created legal issues about who can marry whom, and etc. So the law about adultery. Then there's a law against stealing, a law that says don't steal. I saw a video that someone's home camera had made in the night, in the wee hours of the morning, a man blatantly stealing from someone's storage shed, camping equipment, fishing rods, that sort of thing. at about 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that. I must say that of all the people in the world that I have real problems respecting, it's a thief. I really have to work at forgiveness when it comes to thievery. John, the Gospel of John in the New Testament of the Bible in chapter 10 talks about a thief. A thief comes to steal and kill and destroy. Thievery is just before murder, which is just before total destruction. There's a law that says people should not steal. No matter what anybody thinks of what happened at our United States Capitol a couple of weeks ago, I'm not here to discuss anything about it other than the fact that the young woman who stole a laptop belonging to the leader of the United States House of Representatives, stealing is stealing. That's against the law. I have no respect for that woman because she's a thief. Now, she may sit in a church pew whenever the churches are open. I don't know. She may belong to the Ladies' Wednesday Afternoon Lemonade Society to talk about doing all these good things. I don't know. She may be a mother. I don't know. She may be a faithful wife. I don't know. But I do know this. She's a thief. And the Bible says, don't steal. It's a good law. And then, by the way, this is not a preaching show. This is a show about politics and religion coming together. There's also a law against lying. Why in the world would there be a law against lying? It's because it's such a great temptation, I guess, that people need to be admonished to tell the truth. I'm hearing background noise. Are you hearing it?
Mm-hmm.
Take your earphones off and check with Matt, and I'll keep the show going.
Oh, that's
It's what?
it.
Oh, it's the air conditioner. It's the heat system. I'm sorry, folks. Anyway, you'll just have to put up with the noise because I can't go over to do anything about it. But lying has become almost commonplace. We are lied to by in indirect ways. There's a little bit of difference between misinformation and disinformation. If you take the truth and bend it, it's no longer what it started out to be. So television commercials present us with disinformation. One of them is a well-known former National Football League quarterback who's promoting Medicare supplements and that sort of thing to the older population, and he tells all these benefits, and then he says, and here's the number, it's a 1-800 number, call today, it's free. Sounds like everything he's offering is free. The only thing that's free is the phone call. Anytime you call 1-800, it's free, or at least to the caller, or 1-888, it's free to the caller. It's a deceptive commercial. That's not the only one. Most all television commercials are deceptive. Now, that's lying. But I remember a movie that starred Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson. And Jack Nicholson had a famous line. He said, because Tom Cruise is saying, I want the truth. We want to hear the truth. That's right. And he's on the witness stand. And Jack Nicholson says, you can't handle the truth. Maybe that's where the American people are today.
Mm-hmm.
we can't handle the truth. But we're supposed to, because it's a law that's indelibly written in the fabric of the human psyche. Finally, there's one that says, it's a mistake, big mistake for me to want what my neighbor has. It's a big mistake for me to want something that's advertised on television that I can't afford. It's called coveting. Do not covet. I don't know if anyone has thought about this or not, but there is a relationship between people running their credit cards up really high, going deeply into debt with extremely high interest rates. We know all about that, folks. I don't have to give you additional information. Why does that happen? Because they want something that somebody else has, or that someone else is offering. They covet it. It's interesting. This is the last of these laws, and it's like the first one and the last one tie together. They're the bookends. Remember who God is, and then don't be wanting a lot of stuff that you shouldn't have, don't need, and so forth. Coveting. Go ahead, Nancy.
Yeah. They probably really need God more than they need anything else.
Oh,
If they had things in order, you might say, in their heart and mind.
That's right. So, what I've just dealt with, known as the Ten Commandments, found in the Old Testament book of Exodus, the second book in the Old Testament, second book in your Bible, chapter 20, and it has to do with the Ten Commandments. It would do us all good to reread them once a week. Doesn't take long. So, how does that tie into government and politics? Well, first of all, we have all kinds of evidence that politicians are more concerned about power than they are God.
And they don't mind somehow in their mind getting the power, and they forget the people who they're serving.
Well, they forget God, too.
That's right.
Nancy, we were part of a business organization at one time that said, put God first, and then your family, and then your job, and then this business. We found out that that was the height of hypocrisy. It was not true. Money was put number one. Politicians put power and money ahead of God. Now you say, Paul, you're painting with a broad brush. Yes, I am, on purpose, because to find a politician who really puts God first, and I'm not talking about just lip service, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about really putting God first. I tell you what, they're very rare. I'm sorry, because they have an allegiance to their party, because the party enables them to have a framework to be reelected. And folks, religion and politics, they do come together right here. What's the politician going to do about God? Okay. What about politicians and the Sabbath? It doesn't matter to me whether you consider the Sabbath to be Saturday or whether you consider it to be Sunday. I remember when we had what were called blue laws. And on Sunday, there were a lot of things you couldn't buy. Well, they got rid of the blue laws, probably a good thing. But I'm reminded of what a friend of mine told me, how the shopping scene has changed. A friend of mine told me that he was a good Baptist. And he said, you know, the day was when a good Baptist wouldn't be seen near a liquor store. He said, now we walk past one or through one just about every time we go to the supermarket, because they moved the liquor stores into the supermarket. And I thought, now that's the way the world has changed. Well, we've done the same thing about the Sabbath. And It's all right with me if you take some day other than Saturday or Sunday as your Sabbath. It's all right with me if you don't take one at all. You're the one who'll pay the price. But I can tell you, when it comes to politics, they never have a day off. They really don't take a day off. Even if they try to go to on vacation, if they're on a golf course, they have to be looking over their shoulder all the time. It is a 24/7 position if they're an office holder. And someone who is not an office holder but likes to be involved by helping people get into office, it's what they think about all the time. I have other friends that are very involved in political matters, and that's all they think about is politics. Literally. Try to talk to them about art, forget it. Try to talk to them about theology, forget it. It's politics. Folks, back in the middle 70s, I worked in this capital city of Missouri, where this program comes from. Not the capital city, but from the state of Missouri. But I worked in Jefferson City, our capital. I was the executive director of the Special Committee on Labor Relations, and I was there to research and write a major book-length report on public employee collective bargaining. I had access to many politicians at all levels, including the governor. And I can tell you, in Jefferson City, Missouri, most of the talk is about politics. And it's 24/7. There's never a Sabbath, is what I'm saying, when it comes to politics. I knew an old boy in my home county many years ago who was forever the county collector. Later I became his pastor. And he told me that he always ran scared. He ran for office every waking hour of every day. He seldom came to church until it was time to run for re-election. Then he would show up. And then he would come to see me and ask me for my advice. Should he run again? And I'd say, of course you're going to run again. You always do. Yeah, he said, I always run scared. Well, his son is now the county collector. When it comes to parents, politics internationally takes precedence over family. See, parents means family, really. Look what's happening to family life in America today. Instead of government serving families, government really is doing a disservice to families. Murder, government gets involved, and we know that there are people who are innocent people who are put to death. There are guilty people who are not put to death. The death penalty is an issue. I won't go further with that. Our government today is making all forms of sex and sexual expressions legal, even helping to glamorize them, honoring those who glamorize sexual immorality. Our new president just signed another executive order, and this one simply says that if a young man decides that he's really a female, then he can use the ladies' restroom, and he can use the ladies' locker room in the high school. And if a young woman suddenly decides that she's really a boy, a male, then she has access to the boys' restroom, the boys' locker room. And if a young guy decides that he's a girl, he can go out for the girls' track team. He can play girls' basketball. You think I'm kidding? No, you got to read the fine print, folks, to get the implications of something that has to do with equal access. And President Biden just signed it. It's very friendly to the LGBTQ people. That stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer. That's their initials. They initialed themselves. I didn't do it. LGBTQ. Okay, equal access. This is something that affects commandment number 5. Go into Exodus 20 and look it up. When it comes to stealing, we have politicians who are quite good at it. But we have business people who are quite good at it. We have some ministers who are quite good at it. In fact, if you go to ministrywatch.com, you will get a forthright, honest evaluation of some high-profile pastors who have been guilty of stealing from the church. One of them is going to prison, major denomination. He's going to prison from a large church in Houston, Texas. Going to prison 6 years because he was involved in a Ponzi scheme. So it's not just politicians who steal, but we find now we're in a time when so-called clergy, they steal. Someday I'm going to do a program strictly evaluating the various titles that we have in the world of religion, whether it's imam, or whether it's priest or rabbi, preacher, pastor, parson, apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, teacher, whatever. Take a look at all of these, what they really mean, and what they should be saying to a world that they're not saying. But anyway, this thing of stealing is happening in the political world. It's happening in the world of religion. Personally, I think televangelism is being looked at, needs to be looked at, because a lot of folks are being, somebody's financing new jets. In the year 2019 or 2020, there were 10 new private personal jets purchased by televangelists. Well, I'll leave that with you for you to ponder. I will say this, if you can't pick up your cell phone and call your pastor's cell phone, you don't have a pastor. Anyway, it's just my thought. Religion, also likewise, if you can't pick up the phone and talk to your congressman, you probably don't have a congressman. You have somebody that's representing you. If you can't call your state representative, you don't have one. So think about it. And then when it comes to lying, we used to give all the credit for lying to lawyers. It's not just the property of the legal system, who are able to make the truth make the truth to be what they want the truth to be, or whatever. But I have noticed, as I've watched some televangelists, they are very good at lying. I'm hitting some sacred cows here, I know. Folks, if you want to write, don't write to Acts Ministry or Acts Media Group about this. You write to me. I don't want you to bother them. My email address is public domain property, Dr. Paul Collins at sbcglobal.net. Or you can go to my website and you can send me a message through it, drpaulcollins.com. And doctor is just DR, of course. Because what I'm saying to you is what I'm saying. It's not what Acts Ministry is saying, not what Acts Media Group is saying. It's what I'm saying. And I know that even when I talk about sacred cows, I don't want to offend some Hindu friends. As far as I know, I have 2 people I know who are Hindus, and they happen to be from India. They live in India, but they are also Christians, so I don't know. I may not have a bona fide Hindu friend, but I'm open to it. Anyway, lying. But lying now has become also a part of the advertising industry, and one of these days we hope to have a representative of a huge advertising agency as a guest on this show to talk about truth in advertising. So religion and politics connect over that one about not lying. What about coveting? Certainly, it's evident that we have some politicians who covet the next term in office, or they covet someone else's office that they have, and so they want to move up to a larger office. And they want it, and they talk about having a fire in your belly. And they say if you're going to be a good politician, a good office seeker, you got to have the fire in your belly. And I've heard it said that, well, so-and-so didn't run for office because they just didn't have the fire in their belly for it. Well, we have people that succeed, and I should put that in air quotes for whatever that means, in politics because they really covet the next level, or they covet the job, they covet the power, they covet the prestige, they covet all the trappings of that office. Well,
So they're all for themselves.
yes, but you see the same thing happens in the world of religion. And it doesn't matter whether it's Islam or Judaism or Hinduism or Confucianism or any other ism or Christianity. There are those who covet a position. I have known far too many churches where there was someone seated in the pews who coveted the position of the pastor. I saw it in a church right here in Springburg, USA, Springfield, Missouri. It's my little way of talking lovingly of my adopted city, Springburg, USA. I saw a church, had personal experience with it, where more than once the pastor with open arms would welcome someone in who, he's a good worker. He's a good friend. He's a good supporter. And guess what? Yeah, he walked away with 2 or 3 dozen people out of that congregation to start his own congregation because he coveted the position of the pastor. It happened in Branson not many years ago. A well-known personality walked out of an established church with about 20 to 25 people, started a church that's now a very popular church in Branson. It happens. So it happens not only in the world of politics that people covet, but it happens in the world of religion. Every religion. Now, let's bring this down to a home base. It happens even in the best of families. Sibling rivalry is called. And sometimes it happens between parents and grandparents. Maybe there's a grandparent who wants to own the grandchildren. I know one of those.
So that becomes their God.
Coveting. I know a grandmother who covets the position of the mother of her grandchildren. I know a great-grandmother who covets the position of the mother of her great-grandchildren. It happens. Yes. Religion and politics, they rub shoulders all the time. So we're down to about 3 minutes, Nancy. I wanted to, I had this one little thing of notes, and I have enough material here for 5 shows. Anyway, I wanted to tell you that I personally am opposed to abortion. That's a political and religious matter. I don't know if this is a religious matter or not, but since I'm a religious person and it's a political matter, I think the two tie together a little bit. I favor term limits for all of our legislators on every level. If we can have term limits on a governor and term limits on a state representative, a term limit on a state senator, and term limits on the President of the United States, we could have term limits on people in Congress, our House of Representatives
That's
and
exactly right.
our United States senators.
Yes.
I believe in that. And I believe that full-time legislators could become part-time legislators on the federal level, even as they are on the state level. And some will say, the job is too big. They have to be there all the time. Give me a break. They're not there all the time. They get paid full-time for being there part-time. So make it a part-time job with part-time wages and part-time everything. And by the way, I challenge all of you now to use this good high-tech stuff that we have. Because remember, I've said a good word about technology. Go online, use Google, some search engine, and look up the history of the United States Senate. You will discover that there was a time when senators were not elected in a general election. They were appointed by the state legislature. That was the case until 1913. Woodrow Wilson, a Democrat president, pushed through what's called the 17th Amendment. And it changed from state legislatures naming state or United States senators to making them to be elected by popular vote statewide. And guess what? It has cost more money for political campaigns than we could ever possibly imagine. And they become raucous races where millions and millions and millions of dollars are spent. Recent example, take a look at the state of Georgia. Wouldn't it have been a lot simpler to have had the state legislature appoint those United States senators instead of having 2 elections? Well, that's my opinion. And you know what an opinion is worth. Anyway, one last thing, Matt. A lot of people now, because President Biden has canceled the wall and redoing our immigration situation, they're going to talk about ICE, ICE. Do you know that most people who talk about ICE, even those who want to get rid of ICE, don't know what ICE stands for? I looked it up. It stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Immigration, and they leave out the and. It's Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And of course, the progressives, the liberals, etc., are wanting to get rid of ICE so that more and more immigration is possible. And when more and more immigrants come in, what are we going to do about testing them for COVID? What are we going to do about vaccinating them? A lot of issues. Folks, I suggest you tune in.
But think of
Make it quick.
the immigration comes in, those people need jobs. That's why they're coming. So there's people in this country
Well,
that
it affects jobs. It affects the
Everything.
COVID
Yeah.
testing and so forth. So anyway, folks, I've got a lot more to tell you off of this one little sheet of paper. Be with us next Friday. Until then, stay blessed.